Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey at the JX Fight Club in Shanghai, China. And I better get this question out of the way before the fight actually happens. Got a question, I think it was from our friend Talent Dance TV again. And again, I don't mind if you ask me a million questions. If any of you have questions, let me know. Write them in the comments below or email me at ramseydewey@gmail.com. I'll give you an answer. So he asked my opinion about the upcoming boxing match between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. Now, some time ago, I actually made a video addressing this issue about who I think would win, and to summarize that, Floyd Mayweather is probably going to win this fight, since he is the much more experienced boxer, and this is a boxing match. Okay? But I believe the question addressed the point, how does this fight affect the future of MMA going forward? And I think that's an awesome question. Okay? Because if Conor McGregor somehow does happen to win, that changes things in a big way, at least for me and for those in the MMA industry, if you will. Okay? Because, let me put it this way. Remember when Ronda Rousey was the it girl in mixed martial arts, where she was a household name, she was undefeated, she was winning fights right and left in absolutely dominant fashion? Well, that was a really interesting time at my gym, because at that time, a lot of women came in to train in my mixed martial arts group classes. And that was a very rare time. Now, I've been coaching for years and years, and every once in a while you'll have a girl, maybe two, show up to train. And it's not very common, but every once in a while you'll have one drift in. Okay? But when Ronda was on top, the gym was packed with ladies. We would often have just as many women on the mat as men who wanted to learn how to do arm bars. They wanted to learn jiu-jitsu. They wanted to learn some judo throws. They wanted to learn how to punch, how to kick, how to fight. And I'm not just talking about, working up a sweat and getting a nice workout. They wanted to learn how to fight. They wanted to learn how to win fights. And that was a really exciting time for a couple of reasons, because when you have women come into the gym, it changes the dynamic a lot. Like a lot, and in a very good, positive way, I would say. Okay? Especially if there are lots of them. Because if you're like that one girl in the jiu-jitsu class, or the one girl in the MMA class, or the one girl in the fighting class, you're always going to be, well, most of the time you're going to be sparring and rolling with men who are much larger and much stronger than you, and their mindset, the way they're going to approach training with you, is going to be very different than the way they train with men. And that usually boils down to one of two things. Either A, they'll go way too light and way too easy on you, or B, sometimes, and this is usually the exception rather than the norm, they'll go way too hard and try to prove a point. Okay? So it's great that Ronda Rousey's victories brought that element to my gym, to training. Now, I live in China, in Shanghai, as I mentioned, and the big combat sport here, as far as the public is concerned, is boxing. Now, the national combat sport is sanda, or some people outside of China call it sun shou. It's Mandarin sanda for free fight, or sun shou, free hand. It's basically kickboxing with throws and takedowns. Okay? But that has waned significantly in popularity, even though it is the national combat sport. But boxing's the big combat sport here. Now, MMA kind of has a foothold in China. When I first got here about 9 years ago, there was like nothing here. Nobody knew what MMA stood for. Nobody had seen the UFC. I remember this one time, after being here for about a year, I saw a guy in a tap-out shirt, and I ran up to him and was like, "You know what MMA is?" He was like, "Yeah." And, we just kind of clicked. It's like, wow, I found somebody who knows what MMA is. This is amazing. Now, there are a number of MMA gyms here. There are a number of fight shows that go on throughout China, but again, we still just have the foot in the door here. So, a lot of people are looking at the McGregor-Mayweather fight as a contest to see which is better, boxing or MMA. And that's a very flawed comparison, I know, because it is a boxing match. So ultimately, it is a contest to see who is a better boxer. Okay? And yeah, that's not the way the average person is viewing this. They're seeing it as something much more epic, much more significant. What we're actually going to see is two guys get in there and throw punches at each other and dance around the ring a little bit. Okay? But below the surface, this is a battle for supremacy in combat sports. See, if McGregor wins, this changes things for me, because now all these boxing fans, all these people who respect boxing, all these people who are looking for a martial art or a combat sport or a gym to train in, they're going to start thinking, well, what do I know? What have I seen? Well, I saw that MMA guy beat, that undefeated world champion. Maybe I'll go train MMA. That seems like it's a pretty good thing if they can beat the best boxers. Now, I know any given fight is a contest of individuals, right? I mean, you'll see all these videos titled like Taekwondo versus Muay Thai, or Karate versus Judo, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus Sambo, or whatever. And we can watch that kind of like bug fights, like we put a spider and a scorpion in a jar and shake it up and see what happens. But ultimately, it's a matter of which fighter happened to be a better fighter on that particular day. I mean, that's the reality, but there's this whole other layer that we add on top of that. Okay, there's a subtext we put below that as well. Okay, if McGregor wins this fight, and again, he probably won't, in my opinion, but if he does, if he pulls off that impossible, if he climbs up the ladder and makes this the greatest underdog story of all time, and bigger and better than the movie Rocky. I mean, essentially, this fight is kind of like the story of Rocky. We have this scrappy up-and-comer who pulled himself up from poverty and became a contender, and then he got a shot against Apollo Creed, the undefeated world champion or whatever. That's kind of what this fight is in so many ways. It's like the movie Rocky. And if you look at the movie Rocky, I mean, it's not a movie about a guy winning a boxing match, because, spoiler alert for a 30, 40-year-old movie, Rocky loses the fight at the end. But the movie's not about the win or the loss of the boxing match at the end. It's about the fight, the personal fight. Okay? But the average person, they're not going to be looking at the personal fight. They're going to be looking at the result of who's the man standing with his hand in the air. And if it's that long shot, if it's the underdog, if it's McGregor, again, that changes things for me. Because all these people deliberating over, which martial arts gym am I going to sign up for to learn how to fight efficiently and effectively, they're going to see MMA on the title, associate that with McGregor's potential win, and hey, maybe I should do that too, like I said. So, it's a very long-winded explanation. Now, if Floyd wins, really we just kind of keep the status quo. People who think boxing is better are going to keep believing that. People who think MMA fighters can't beat boxers or can't hang with them are going to keep believing that. Okay? Now, there was a fight a while back. I'm blanking on the guy's name. Pro boxer, very good boxer. He fought, what's his name? Blanking on the names, guys. Woke up very early this morning. Former Tim Sylvia. Yeah, he fought Tim Sylvia, former heavyweight UFC champion, and within the opening moments, boom, knocked him out with a heavy shot. And I believe this was his second MMA fight. His first MMA fight, he got taken down and ground and pounded. And his second MMA fight, he managed to slip a punch and boom, get a nice counter punch in and knock Tim Sylvia out. Now, the reason this didn't really make headlines, and I didn't even hear about this fight until a couple of years after the fact, is because it was not a larger-than-life fight. It was a boxer who had run his whole career. You know, he wasn't really in the limelight. He was no longer, you know, the top contender, if you will. Very good, talented boxer, fighting a guy who was no longer on the top in MMA. Tim Sylvia was no longer fighting in the UFC at that point. So essentially, the public looked at it, in spite of the fact that they were two talented fighters, as a couple of has-beens doing a freak show fight. Now, McGregor versus Mayweather, yeah, it's a freak show fight. Make no mistake about that. But we got two guys on the top of their game selling it like it is Godzilla versus King Kong, like I said before. So to recap, if McGregor wins, that's fantastic for the business of MMA, not necessarily the sport of MMA, but the business of MMA. If Mayweather wins, which he probably will in my opinion, the status quo continues. Okay? As far as how it affects the sport, you know, I don't think it will affect the sport per se. We're not going to change any rules because of it, probably not. But the business is going to change in a big way. Okay? Money is going to change hands very differently should McGregor win that fight. All right, thanks for listening to my rant. Get out there and train, guys.